So, it's the start of the tax year, and PhysicWhip are really keen to help you get off to a flying start in April 2025. So, we are offering to cover your entire VAT on any technology purchased in this time, so the whole 20%. The reason we're doing this is because there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, a lot of uncertainty in the markets, and this can mean that people do hesitate or not want to spend money. However, we know that if you want this technology, the sooner you can get it in, the sooner it's going to be beneficial for you, for your clients, and the business. So we want to help build that momentum. It helps us as well keep moving things forward. We're already placing large orders, and we'd love to kick things off. So please get in touch. We'll cover all of your VAT for any order purchased in April 25, and we'd love to help you. Richmond Stace is he's quite a unique character in the industry. He's officially a chronic pain specialist, consulting with various different sports teams, clinics, as well as having his own practice based in London. He is a really interesting and thoughtful guy, and I love spending time with him because he's all about treating the client rather than the condition, and really understanding, communicating, listening, empathising with whoever is sat in front of him, whether it's a patient, whether it's me, and it's a really fascinating approach. So we had a good chat here talking about all those subjects, pain, communication, and I found it really fascinating. So I hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Richmond, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, love to come to very nice premises in Sloane Square. And so just talk to me about what you do. So you're a chronic pain specialist. Tell me a bit about what you do and like why do people come to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Why do people come to me? I do ask myself that. No, but seriously, I mean, I guess I've carved out this niche over the years of being here to help people who suffer with chronic pain or persistent pain, people that are really stuck and struggling, and that goes right across the board, all ages, backgrounds. There's lots of different reasons, why people do experience chronic pain, and I guess my background and trainings, multiple trainings, which was somewhat criticised actually at times on the way through. I guess people looked at it and thought, you don't really know what you want to do you? But
what do you mean? What were the trainings then?
Well, I'll try and keep it short. Nursing, and then I did rehabilitation with sports science. I had exercise physiology, S&C, and all of that kind of thing, and then physiotherapy, and then pain neuroscience. And then that's been heavily laced with all sorts of other, I guess you'd call them psychological trainings, although I don't divide up the physical and the mental at all, as you know from our previous chats. So, motivation interviewing, other communication techniques, positive psychology, obviously the coaching, and sort of that culmination that made me think, well, what is it that we can do? How can we really help people suffering with chronic pain? And it always came back to the coaching. And funnily enough, I sort of think I remember when that first happened. And it was when I trained to be a cricket coach many years ago. And I was one of the coaches for my son's cricket club. And I remember working with these kids on things and thinking, you know what? This is really quite similar to the good stuff that happens when I work with people. So that was quite a long time ago. So the coaching had sort of been there and thereabouts. And to me, it just made so much sense because as you sort of understand pain and what it is and why it comes about and the conditions from which it arises, and I don't mean medical conditions there, I mean all of the conditions are biology and circumstance and environment and such like. And you realize that it's, people have to make their own way forwards, but we're there as guides and encouragers. And it just seemed that coaching was the way. So the pain coaching idea really came from all of those different backgrounds and working with lots of different people. It's amazing people that I'd met and had the privilege to be trained by or tutored by, particularly as nursing actually. It's amazing tutors. And it just sort of did a full circle. I went through the whole kind of, the black and white medical way of thinking about things, and that. But that is just never satisfying and never delivered the results. But now I know why. But at the time, that's kind of all you knew, as is the case for many.
So, like, what when you say why wasn't that fulfilling, or why wasn't that what you wanted?
I guess there was a gut feel to it in some ways, but also in the actual results. It just seemed a bit too hit and miss. Sometimes people would get better and sometimes people wouldn't. There's something by basing it on the belief that where it hurts is where the problem lies. And of course, that's not the case. It's the person that feels pain. So if you get to understand pain, you've got to understand the person. You've got to understand their life, what they've experienced, what they believe, what they think about, what they expect. All of that stuff is really, really important. And some people say, well, that's like psychology, isn't it? And I'm like, well, I suppose you could call it that. But no, it's about seeing a person and seeing a person first, and a person who has beliefs, and they've been shaped by all of their experiences so far, conditioning, raw conditioned to an extent. What's happened to them, how they've processed it, how they relate to it, how they think about it, what they do, how they behave. So, once you start realizing that, it's much more complex, but it opens the door to so many possibilities and opportunities, and that's the beautiful thing about it. When you're explaining to someone, you might have met them for the first time, about some of these things, I always say, look, yeah, it is. It's a lot more complex than saying, injury causes pain, or sitting in that posture causes pain. And they don't, by the way. But that's still a lot of the thinking. And then you explain what we know, and it is more complex. And they, well, that can seem quite overwhelming. So you have to do it in particular ways and whatnot. But essentially, you then say, yeah, but the good news is it creates so many opportunities to live yourself better. And that could be getting back to sport if it's in the sports world, or it could be getting back to work, it could be playing with the kids, whatever it is that person wants to focus on, we can focus on.
So what would that tangibly look like? So you've had patients today. So how is that different, say, to what they would go through? How long would they see you for? Which I'm sure is dependent on what it is that you're talking with them about. Well, like, what do the sessions look like?
They look like coaching sessions, and it actually took me quite a long time to sort of say that. And actually, it sort of feels sort of quite emotional, sort of thinking about that sort of journey of getting to the point where that's how I describe it. Because I think coaching now is much more accepted. I mean, it's still a bit of a wild west, I suppose, in many ways. So it can be tinged with that, but increasingly with health coaching, it's more accepted. Within the NHS, within society. You look at anyone who's been successful in anything, they usually have some kind of coach or mentor. But I struggled with that for a long time because it's what I really wanted to do, because I felt that was the best way I could help people. But people didn't really know what it was in relation to pain, because they just, yeah, but surely you've got to fix me. Surely, there's some injury, or there's something still damaged, or people using the word earlier. They were using this, not me, saying, well, you're a bit broken. But that language is really powerful and potent. Does that make someone feel if they're told, that's the case, or they're told, these common things like you've got a crumbling spine, or you're degenerating, this sort of stuff. The way that we describe things to people really, really matters. It needs to be accurate. And there are so many myths about pain. I said about, sitting, I was writing about that earlier, because, people still say, oh, my posture causes my back pain. Well, no, it doesn't. There's no direct causative link there. You can sit however you want, be comfortable, and move often. That's the key to look, because it's looking after yourself. It's important to look after yourself. But actually sitting in a chair, look at me, I'm sort of slumped here like that. Is that going to cause me back pain? Well, my back might start aching at some point. Is it because of the way I'm sitting? Well, sort of biomechanics might say, yes, it's because of the way you're sitting, but that's not taking into account a raft of other contributing factors. including things like, have I sat like this before and it's been comfortable or painful? If I've sat like this before and it's been painful, it's more likely to be painful now. So it immediately takes away the idea of cause and effect. And the biomedical model looks for cause and effect. It looks for things that are measurable and visible. But pain is neither measurable nor visible. These scores, what's your pain out of 10? I mean, come on, doesn't really tell me much.
Now, I think it is really interesting. Like when I'm just referring to the dentist, don't like the dentist particularly, but if you've got a dentist who I like, and I had a hygienist and she was just brilliant, and it was like just made a massive difference when you're going in there. Because if you actually had a tooth out in the past or something, it's like it's not a pleasant experience. So it's got a huge effect on you. And there's a lot of different examples that you can do there. So no, I really believe in like the psychology of everything. I really believe in belief in I'm not good at listening to bad news or things for whatever reason. I like positive. I don't like hearing things, which again, you can probably dig into that. But I really believe in the psychology of the way that you do things. And I was actually chatting with my friend earlier on, like when you're hanging around with, say, people that are saying, "Oh, we're getting old," it drives me up the wall. It just, because it's just like, well, I don't want to think about that. Yeah, everyone's getting older, but why would you want to focus on that bit of it?
Yeah.
So I definitely, the psychology piece in everything, and particularly where you've got people that are coming to you in a vulnerable state because they're searching for something. So even more so, they require whatever that may be. So how do they respond when you are going through this, where we're having a chat like this, I guess?
Yeah. It's very conversational. It's very important that we try and have a rapport, a connection. It turns out that, that connection and how we are together is as important as any therapy or technique or intervention, that kind of thing, which is not always popular within sort of the therapeutic community to think that, because it means you've got to work on yourself. How you are, what's my approach with this person? Am I truly listening? Am I able to accurately empathize? In other words, to show them that I really understand what they're saying, and that really matters. If you think about anything or a time when you've been troubled, and you go and talk to someone, and you come away from that feeling that they've really listened. They may not have even offered any solutions. You may not have been asking for solutions, but you got that first really important touch point was, I feel understood. There was communication between us, which is really what communication is about, isn't it? Understanding each other and clarifying it where it's maybe ambiguous or uncertain as best we can. And that's so important, because what you're delivering in terms of the information about pain is going to meet some resistance at some point, because everyone turns up with existing beliefs about it. And somehow we have to look at that and examine it and then update beliefs that are unhelpful or limiting. I can't get better, this won't change. Aging, there's nothing I can do about that. But just as you said before there, what you're intimating, one of the key principles is to focus on what you want, not what you don't want. And so I might say that to someone, and they'll say, well, yeah, but I don't want this pain. Completely understandable, that kind of response. But the thing is if you're focusing on the pain and focusing on that part of the body or those parts of the body, and you're trying to treat those parts of the body and do things, and that's the main thrust, which is the biomedical way and still the main way that things are done, the outcomes are really poor. Because it's like saying, don't think of elephants. Because even if you say, look, my goal is not to have pain, well, you've got to have pain to not have pain. So your focus goes straight back on. So the way that we think and our language and even the communication we have with others about it, how are you doing? Oh, that pain. It's reinforcing, and it's creating lots of evidence. Thoughts are sensory evidence or sensory data as much as movement or anything else. So the way that we're thinking about things really matters. The way we relate and respond matters, because how life turns out, we have no control over. What happens in the future, we have no control over that directly. So let's not waste energy on that, because we need to be putting energy into what we're doing right now that's most likely going to take us in the best direction that we can. So in other words, you clarify your picture of success. What do I want? I want to be able to go for a walk with the dog. I want to play with the kids. I want to go back to work. I want to get back onto the pitch. Right. What do you need to be doing every day to be heading in that direction? Thinking and acting behavior consistently. Boom, 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 boom. And how do I recognize when I've strayed from that path? Because we do, because we're human, and get back onto it as quickly as possible, focusing on where I'm going, realizing that I'm not there yet, I'm here. You know, that's always an imagined future. Well, all the future is always imagined. So it's like or I call it process over prize. Focus on what you're doing and your process, because the prize, there'll be a prize, but you can't say what it is. Just like a football team can't say, we're going to win 3-0. What a football team can do is play their best game, do the basics consistently well, and then add the shiny stuff over the top. Exactly the same with rehabilitation, recovery, overcoming pain. Do the basics consistently well. Build a strong foundation with deep roots. Practice certain things that are unique to you and what you want to achieve. Be here now to do that, and come back to now when you drift off into the past or future, which we all do. And they're all skills that you learn and sharpen.
Yeah, I mean, even now it's helpful for me just when you're processing it, because it's very easy to get drawn into, we've got to do that, we've got to do that sales number, whatever it may be there, and it's like, actually you've got zero control over any of that stuff. However, I listened to a really enjoyable on the High Performance podcast with Ali Abdaal. Don't know if you know him. He's like a productivity guy, but one of the things he said is like, right, for your month, if you just pick 2 or 3 things that you're going to focus on, and I did it for me, which was get out and see more people, produce more content, and that is what I'm here to do. Shared it with the team. This is what I'm doing. I've done it, and it actually just takes the pressure internally off me to think I've got to do all these things. Come back. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm focused on. Right or wrong, that is what I'm committed to doing. We'll review it, and it really helps, because it's like there's, again, I kind of know all this stuff, but you still very easily can drift back into be like, what am I doing? Yeah. And I guess that is the power of having a coach and being part of a peer network, that people can just bring you back, because in your mind, this is no one's experienced this before, whereas the reality is that everyone has gone through challenges, but having someone that can bring them back.
Yeah.
So how do you how much more coaching is that? So in the sessions, is this a long process then that you're doing with these people then? Is it, like, how many sessions does it tend to be? Like, what is the relationship for you? Because I guess when they come in for physio, it's, right, well, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do these exercises, and I'm going to go. So how does a traditional client look for you?
Well, very different to that, and it's very much needs over numbers. It's principles over protocols. These are sort of, I suppose, little catchphrases I use, because each person is individual and each interaction is unique. Each moment is fundamentally different, and effectively, I'm coaching them to coach themselves, because they're with themselves all the time. So they need to know how to establish what their needs are in that moment. How am I? What do I need right now? What am I going to do? And then they need to figure out, well, what's the best thing to do? How much? And then recover afterwards. So that's what I mean by principles over protocols. So the classic way is, right, here's 5 exercises, 10 by 3, off you go. But that assumes that everybody's the same and that each touch point where they're practicing is the same. Neither of those are true. That person needs to go, okay, well, how am I right now? Okay, this is what I'm feeling. What do I predict I can do that will be a good experience? So the way our systems work means that what I'm doing now will shape what will come. They're predictive. So I'm trying to create better experiences now. So what that might mean is that a better experience is doing 10 by 2, 5 by 3, whatever it might be. But I'm going to decide that based on actually how I am now, so being present. And there's skills to be, meditation, for example. You learn to be present and to be wise. What do I need to do? Versus, what do I want to do? I want to do 10 by 3 because that's success. No, success is doing it the best way you can, because you'll build on that. If you do 10 by 3 and then you're in loads of pain afterwards, that means next time you come to do those exercises, your systems will go, that was painful last time. Boom, more likely to be painful this time. That's not success. So if you measure it on just the numbers, you can quite easily be going down the wrong path. If you measure it more on need, well, my needs are this. I need to do these movements, but I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to work within my window of tolerance. And that was a good practice. That's success because I did it according to what I actually need. And then you can build on from that. So there's coaching around that, but it's coaching the person to coach themselves. There's much more nuance. Getting better is an up and down business. There's all sorts of influences. There's all sorts of motivations we have no access to, inside, deep inside. And why do I want to do that? Well, I do it because I like that. Well, you're guessing, really. There's plenty of other motivations deep inside our systems. We do a lot of it on feel. How does that feel? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to shape an experience, not a measure. We're not trying to, change some sort of data point. When you can measure certain things, can't measure pain, as we said. Do you feel better? Yeah, that feels great. Brilliant. Let's do more of that. Versus, I can move my arm 90 degrees. Okay, does that feel better? No, because it still hurts. You see the problem with sort of just using logical thinking, just using data, just using tech. We're working with people's experiences here, what it's like to be a human. That's what we're shaping, because that's what we have. That's all we have to work with. There's no button to press to get a readout of what's going on in my body. I just go, well, how am I feeling? What do I think is going to be useful right now? What do I need? I need a drink. I need something to eat. I need to move. I need a hug. I need to breathe. I need to relax. I need to develop a calmer mind. I need the loo, whatever. But you have to be present to know that. And sometimes, or actually quite often, things aren't as we want them, so it's uncomfortable. But that's information. Pain is information. It's a message that there's work to be done. And it's not work for someone else to do, it's work for me to do. So again, the pain coach is there to help understand this, to shine the light on that, but also to shine the light on that person's strengths and abilities to do stuff. The people I work with, they amaze me in what they do. To get here, to come online sometimes, when you look at their circumstances, it just blows me away. I have to hide that sometimes because you think, whoa. I'm just sat here at home here listening and talking to you and suggesting ways that you can make your life better, but the effort it took you to get there. These are amazing people with incredible strengths. They think they're weak and vulnerable. I see something totally different, and as a coach, you shine the light on that. And as far as I'm concerned, to do this kind of work, you've got to be prepared to go there. You've got to be happy to go there. You've got to. You are talking about emotions and hate, and that's not psychology. Well, people might argue it's psychology. I suppose it is in some, but I'm not thinking that because what techniques do you use? What strategies? I don't know. I just sit with another human being and we have a conversation about what you want to achieve and then look at practical ways of doing it according to how you actually are right now, and then build on that.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. My fiance is a CBT therapist and she works in the NHS, but they're trying to have some sort of link, which is proving very difficult in a pain service, just with the typical NHS-y type politics on there. But I totally makes sense when you're talking it through. I've never come across anyone like this, and I meet a lot of clinicians, and yet bedside manner, as people may say, is an expression thrown around. So how many other people are doing what you're doing? And before you answer that, actually, just because you mentioned the about at the moment we've got tech for everything. We're obviously involved in tech, but I saw a new clinic opening. I think it opened yesterday. It was just about to open, which was basically screening someone. I don't even know how it does it, but it's like AI health screen. So you go in, it does something, and it gives you a readout.
Right.
So, I'm asking you two questions here, but I'll ask this one first. So, what are your thoughts on something like that, where it gives you a number? Like you see Whoop, there's data here, there's all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Because it's people like data, it's quantifiable.
They love it. Yeah, we all do to an extent, because we want certainty, but yet we have a life full of uncertainty. And there are upsides to that. You might go and have, that sort of test, and it reveals something that you can then treat. And I guess people will use that as a strong argument, all the preventative stuff. But there's flip sides to that as well, because, we get false positives, false negatives, and all the rest of it. We've got a lot of what are called the worried well. And I don't mean that in I'm not criticizing those people, because we're all subject of our society and culture and beliefs, and we get sucked in. It's very powerful. There's a lot of powerful marketing around these things, and tech is, we like it, generally speaking. So there will be some pluses. It's really how it's used and how it's marketed. And I would look at these things and just hope that the marketing is not manipulating people at all. So some people argue that all marketing is some kind of, but there's, it's got to be used. Tech has got a place, but it's got to be used in the right way to effectively help people. So, we've talked a lot about this, haven't we? Person first, person before profit, before player, before. This is a human being with a unique experience of themselves, doing their best in their world with what they have to that point. And if they want to achieve something else, something better, which they can, then they might need help or guidance, coaching, and such like.
It really does resonate with me, because again, we sell technology, but from my side, you would never ever want a treatment to be based purely on, this is, you come in, you do that bit of technology, whatever that may be, and that's the end of it. It comprises a part to hopefully reinforce something and say, look at what you've done here, or how it links in there, or we can adapt that, but done in that way that it's about where you've hopefully found out at that point. And I'll refer to a good friend of mine, Andrew McCauley. He's all about coaching. He talks about it a lot, and he'd be a good person for me to introduce you to. But it's really trying to understand that person, and then you're hopefully tailoring what the message is to them that's going to motivate, engage, and really support them on it. And he's using tech in that, but it is about that person first. And it's also from our side, how do we support the clinicians to have more of this mindset to actually connect with someone? Like just talking to you, like you connect, eye contact, whatever it is, you're listening to what I'm saying, which doesn't always happen. And that is powerful.
I mean, I guess some people find it easier than others to connect, to communicate, for a whole bunch of reasons. But these are skills that you can improve. I mean, for example, you could go and do motivational interviewing training, and undoubtedly you'll go through that process. And there's no hard end to that. You keep developing. You cultivate your own mind of curiosity and compassion. When I sat opposite someone, I mean, there's a table here, but if I would probably choose not to have a table if I could with people. Most of the time, I mean, I'm human, so my mind does wander, but most of the time, I'm very interested and curious in that person's experience, because life is about stories. We love stories, and someone's telling you a story, and what a privilege it is that they're telling you about themselves. I mean, wow. I mean, maybe I'm a bit geeky about it. I don't know, but it does.
I think that is quite unusual. But I feel like I can empathise, because I agree with you. It's like when anyone gives you their time, let alone is paying for your time. They are unique in their own way, aren't they? And it does resonate with me, because that's what I feel like, whether I'm in at Man United or wherever, or at a one-man operation, a student, whoever it is. I do find it's like, this is a person that is trying to. They're giving you your time, hopefully, because they're interested in you as well, and it's that sort of symbiotic way.
We need each other. I can't help them, and if we're not connected, as much as the other way around is true. I mean, as you said, it's a synergy, and the more honest and open someone can be about how they feel, what it's like for them, well, the better grip I can get to enable me to make offers and suggestions, and to guide and to encourage. Imagine you had, in whatever situation you had, and you're with someone, and they just gave you yes/no answers for everything. it'd be very hard to help that person. I mean, that does happen sometimes, and there's reasons why that might, they might be very scared or nervous and such like, and so there's things that you might work on there. But if you develop a relationship with someone and you work together and they feel heard, it's not quite that you could offer them any kind of therapy or intervention or thing to do and it would help. What you do matters because it needs to be in line with what they want to achieve. But without that know-how, which comes through that relationship, that collaboration, those caring conversations, then no tool is any good if you don't know how to use it, or it's very, very hit and miss. And there's something that's sort of going back to what we were saying a little bit before about the truly personalised care and rehabilitation and such like. Most treatment programs or exercise programs are sort of given and sheets are given and hand over all that. And we talked before about personalising it and it's unique to each moment and giving people the principles to work with. So you're teaching them to fish rather than giving them fish, even telling them what fish they're going to have. So you're teaching them to fish so that they can do it themselves and make the progress themselves. But there's another fundamental issue. And I usually do it like this with people. I say, how much time are you spending doing your specific exercises, your skills and such like to get better? And obviously I get a range of answers. I mean, it could be 0 for some people, but most people are doing something. It may be 1/4 of an hour a day. Some people might be exercising for an hour a day or whatever. Some people a little bit more. I mean, it varies enormously. But for ease, let's say it's an hour a day. So what that means is that they're spending 7 hours a week doing some training to get better. You might think on the face of it, that's pretty good. I mean, it is, it's better than 0 because they're doing that for 7 hours. Okay, so what time do you get up? Whatever time. What time do you go to bed? Whatever time. How many hours a day are you awake? Most people are up for 15, 16 hours or something like that. Okay, how many hours a week? So you're looking at usually over 100 hours a week. So now what you've got is 7 hours of practice, 100 hours awake. Okay, so that other 93 hours, how are you using that to get better? And it makes the point that the biggest bulk of time is that waking time. When you're not exercising specifically, you're going about your business. So unless your rehabilitation program addresses that enormous bulk of time, how do you live yourself better in your thinking and your actions? And they're much the same. Or they come together rather. Then those exercises are probably not going to make the difference that they could. They're important because they're signposts through the day, but you also need to practice through the day anyway. So it's a bit like if you're sailing a boat, you might set your course at the beginning of the day. In other words, you do your exercises at the beginning of the day, and then off you go. But the wind changes, the weather changes, the waves change. So now you've set your course here, but now you're going over there. So unless you've got things during the day where you're coming back on, you're going to end up over there, which is not where you want to be. You want to be over here. So again, the whole way that it's done, the know-how matters enormously. Because most people know, I've not met anyone yet coming in with existing programs that do it to that degree. And if you want success, you've got to do it to that degree.
Yeah. I mean, whether anyone's in pain or not, this is helpful, isn't it? For anyone, is like if you've just keeping yourself on track, not getting sidetracked, everyone gets distracted, being present. Like I was cycling here today and it's loads of other things. I'm like, do I check my WhatsApps when it's going? It's like, just cycle and don't be thinking about anything else, not just from a safety perspective. But look, you're not going to do anything else now. So you're on the cycle, just do that. So I know that all this stuff, I read a lot, but it's still very easy to get sucked into being busy, doing what you're doing. So what would your advice be to be present, to be focused and have a plan, I guess, to work on yourself, whether that's about getting out of pain or just in general?
Yeah, well, you need all those things, and they can't be books on the shelf. Lots of people have meditation books on the shelf. Do you meditate? Sometimes. Whatever you're doing, as you said, if you're cycling, cycle. And learning to focus. Focusing, paying attention is a skill of being well. It's not this is a non-negotiable thing. There's skills out there. There's things that we need to be doing each day if we want to be well. And as we said before, getting better, overcoming, easing pain, easing suffering. We need practices, or sometimes I call it a practice, and your practice are the different skills and strategies you use together with the know-how to stay on your path and to realize when you've gone off the path. So you might need reminders, you need prompts until they become, what you do. And a lot of the stuff that can be really helpful for people to overcome their pain problems has got nothing to do with pain whatsoever. It's about having that focus, how you look after yourself, installing higher beliefs around gratitude and compassion, and that kind of self-care, not being selfish. This matters. This stuff really, really matters. We all have our own existing philosophy. We all have our own existing beliefs. We may not have verbalized it, but taking the time to think about that, thinking about what matters to us, what are my highest values, and you can see what they are because they're in what you do, not just stuff written down. What do I do with ease? I love picking up my guitar. It's really easy. Well, I value that. I value doing that thing. Okay, well, I need to bring that into my life. That needs to be part of my day-to-day journey because it makes me feel really good. Is that an important way of overcoming pain? Yeah, because if you're not filling your life, your capacity, your attention with those kinds of things you need to do, ways of looking after yourself, ways of self-caring, looking at your sleep, looking at your diet, looking at movement, looking at exercise, looking at relationships, looking at how you handle the inevitable ups and downs, learning how to do suffering well, which sounds weird in our culture, but we will suffer. Do you have the skills to relate and respond in order to ease your suffering? Yes, no. Okay, well, let's build on that. We need that stuff. We need that stuff. And it might sound overwhelming initially. So again, as a coach, what you do is you feed it in at the right time, bit by bit. Stuff like Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits. There's some great ways in those books and those guys around the dynamics of creating habits. So again, as a coach, you help people. You don't just give them, they do this thing. But this is how you do it. Set the bar low, acknowledge it. Let's remove some of the barriers. All of that stuff. It's all in there. Because it has to be, because we want, as you said, there has to be a plan. You've got to see a way forward, albeit it's always imagined because it's the future. See where you are now. Meditation is the best way of learning to be present, to drop judgment, to drop concepts, to see things as they are. Because then you can work with actually what's happening, even if you don't like it. Because that is what's happening. Life turns up. Nothing you can do about the way it turns up. But how you relate to it, that's the skill. That's what you can do. That's our superpower, is learning how to relate to it. And if you can cultivate the calm, balanced mind, the equanimity, the ability to see clearly, cut through the noise, wow, that's powerful stuff, man.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. Definitely is. I've still not quite got into the meditation, but the Apple Watch has been very good because it gives you the breathing. So I'll do 2 minutes in the morning of just breathing, sat in the chair. I make sure I get up before I go to the gym, and then I'll do a reflection one, and it's really good. It does help.
Yeah.
And just breathing, even being present. I know when you're in that a bit of an angst state, and just sitting there and breathing for a minute, it actually makes a massive difference. Which is, I've only recently started doing that, but it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
So what would you say to, for clinicians, what advice to get onto this way? Because I didn't let you answer that question before, but I've not met anyone who's got this type. They may have elements of it, but yours is very therapy, coaching based. What would your advise people to explore into this?
Yeah, people ask that. I do quite a lot of mentoring actually of clinicians, and so that's me sort of sharing. I've got it's a unique background, and I wouldn't suggest that people need to go and do, all that stuff. There are other people that call themselves pain coaches. I don't always know I don't know their backgrounds and whatnot. I would just hope that it's an appropriate background, because these things can get a bit faddy, a bit guru-like, and such like, and that's not my bag at all. I see pain coaching as a way that could easily be distilled, as in we can train people in the essentials of it, so that it can be used. I mean, I know health coaching has become quite big in the NHS, and I think that's brilliant and that can grow, but I think pain coaching is specific for chronic pain. Where would I suggest people go? I mean, I'm not sure I can actually answer that directly. I mean, it's quite tricky in many ways. Read far and wide. So most of the stuff I've learned has come from non-pain. In fact, a lot of it's come from non-medical. Read some of the great coaches. Check out John Wooden's stuff. Check out Tim Galway's stuff. The Inner Game. Tony Robbins, he's got some brilliant, but look at the way that people do it as well. Not just what they're saying, but how do they deliver these messages? Look at copywriters, study copywriters and how they communicate. Look at people who read the news, comedians. So, I will study and look. I haven't done so much recently, but with talking gigs and such like, and presenting. Eddie Izzard, I watched him endlessly to study his ways. Dave Allen, that goes back a little bit. Great storytellers. Stuart Lee, brilliant storytellers. Study these people because it's about communication. It's about meeting people where they are. It's about seeing them as human beings and being really curious, even if what they say you don't agree with. We were talking earlier about certain characters in history. We can learn a lot from the way that they've done it, and then employ that in skillful ways to help people. Look at communication, look at motivation interviewing. And of course, you can learn more and more about the pain science. And so I would encourage that. If you want to work with people with pain, you've got to know where that is. You've got to really have a good understanding of something like predictive processing as a model and other models. That's a given. That's essential. If you don't know that stuff, you've got to get a grip on it, because otherwise you're not going to be able to deliver what we really know, and it's moving quick, so you've got to keep up with it. That's a challenge. I guess I'm lucky. I work for myself. I don't think I could work for anyone now. Not directly. I could work with, but not. I don't think I could have a boss. I think I'd be a nightmare. Carve out that time to learn, but not just read stuff. Reflect on it. Really get it in there.
Yeah. No, I think it's really, really important, and I know some of my friends have gone into universities, and I think it'd be great if they would start introducing things around this within the universities, and just personal development stuff, like you say. It's not even medical specific. Anyone, communication, networking, mentoring, all of these things, just then human skills. They're not medical skills. It's actually just being able to, as you said before, build a connection. That makes such a powerful difference once you've got that. And if you've got that, you feel like you've got support or whatever it is. It's just it's like it's a massive thing.
Yeah, well, and we need that. I mean, particularly in the physio world, there's not a huge amount of mentoring and support. It's people come to me for mentoring. It's they're choosing to do it. It's not compulsory. I would encourage it because I've done it and I know the value of it. I've been very lucky with some of my mentors, incredible human beings. Mick Thacker, Mike Pegg. I mean, amazing guys. So I would definitely encourage that. I mean, some universities are interested. I've been chatting to a few people at different universities about, and I've delivered in universities some of these things, and it seems to have always gone down very well. I think people instinctually know, this is a human endeavor. And I'm always open to talking to whoever about it. And I think there's we've been talking about, certain areas where this kind of thinking could be really useful to help in sport. I've been lecturing about pain and chronic pain at the Sports Med Masters at Queen Mary's for years now. So, and it's nice actually, because some of the guys who I've lectured to there have then later on sort of come back and chatted about it, which is really nice to know that there's been some kind of impact. But yeah, more of that, particularly in where the biomedical model has got such a grip, because it does have a place in certain quarters. but not for anything that falls outside of that. And there's a tendency to sort of try and grip onto everything. Medicine is not the answer for chronic pain, or for most chronic conditions, actually. It can have a small role in making sure that there's nothing, that needs to be treated with some sort of medical way, which is obviously its strength. But once that's established, let go, because now it's another skill set that's required to help that person move forwards. And that's really important. That's really, really important. And so, where I can have conversations with people or talk about that, about how we can move forward together and work better, reduce the load on GPs with these chronic conditions. And in other areas, in sport, when they get stuck with, or players get stuck and they're struggling, let's talk about that. How we can do that. We can help them. We can really help them, but it requires letting go. So
yeah, no, I think it's really powerful beyond pain, just in terms of that general coaching, communication, rapport building, all of that. So thank you very much for sharing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do, what we do, because I know we're talking about some things. So thank you for sharing.
No, brilliant. Great to chat.